let's create our window return, and let's create our set flat in 3 dimensions. At the moment, this is just 2-dimensional objects. If I click on this, it's a polyline. You can see it's cut out on it. What I want to do is give this a thickness and effectively give this return here, this outline and depth the way. And that is creating this thickness here and this depth for return here. Let's jump back into Vectorworks. We'll do that right now. At the moment, you will get these pop-ups if you are using things for the first time. These are the help functions. They can get a bit boring if you know what you're doing. Quite handy on certain functions that you haven't used before, because it'll go, hey, do you know you can do this by holding the control key and dragging around with the middle mouse button? You go, yeah, cool. If you don't show this dialog box again and click that and hit OK, it will keep coming back and it will bore you to death. This here is the flyover tool. And this allows me to move around this space in 3D. And you can see now that the cube down the bottom left here has changed to have the X is left and right, the Y is front and back, and this blue Z here is the height. You can see this is very, very flat at the moment. And this is sitting at sort of 0 on the Z. So it's sitting on the floor. What I want to do is give this flat some thickness. This effectively fly window return for the aperture here, some depth. And to do that, we're going to use the Extrude command. Selection tool. If I select this object here, I can effectively start to give this thickness, a depth, a 3D element to it. And I do this by using the Extrude command. So if I go to Model on the toolbar at the top here and do Extrude, now the shortcut for this is Control and E. On the Mac, it's probably Command and E. If you are on a Mac, so if you're in the DTU or something like that, the commands will be different. But if you go up to the toolbar and find it, it should tell you what the shortcut is. If I click Extrude now, it's going to say, okay, with the object selected, if you've selected something that can't be extruded, it will throw up and it will start to scream at you and go, oh no, we can't do this. So you know that you've got the right thing to start with, the right object, by being able to see this option here. You want to select your object first and start the extrude. At the moment it's saying 0, so I can extrude effectively forward and back on that Z-axis, or whichever direction it was facing. I extrude in a positive, a plus, so extrude forward, or extrude back, up or down, depending on the orientation of your object. That makes sense. So for this extrusion, I'm just going to hit cancel for now. For this flat, if I jump back to my sheet, my information sheet, it's saying the thickness of the flat, 25 mil, and that's that thickness here. Thickness there. Back into Vectorworks, and again, select this object, this thing, this flat, go to Model, press Extrude. I'm going to press 25 because that's going to make it 25 mil. I'm going to press OK. You will see that in your object information palette here, that it is now changed to an extrude. So it's no longer a polyline, it's now an extrude, and that means it's a 3D object. It gives you the information, so the overall size of it, and also what the extrusion is here. The extrusion is 25. So if I accidentally muck this up, let's say I've made this 500, you'll see it's very thick now. Give you an indicator. If I've mucked that up, it's an extrude. I'm highlighting the object and make it the right depth. The bottom Z is basically where this is sitting in relation to the floor. So at the moment it's at 0, which means it's sitting on the floor, 25mm up. So that's the flat done. Now if I want to go back into my top plan mode, so I'm looking at all of the wire drawing, I can press 0 on my number pad, or I can jump up to this view here. So where it says custom view, because I've been using the flyover tool, sort of been around the 3D space, oopsie daisy, it says custom view next to this plane preference. If I click on this tab, there's lots of different ways I can look at this. The top plan will bump me into this standard view mode, standard drawing mode. Click down again. Top will make this into 3D, but looking at it from the top. You can see that it's got that fill in it now, because it's a nice 3D object. I can look at the front, which is very boring because it's sitting on the floor and you can't really see anything. I can look at the right, which again is very boring. Or I could look at an isometric view, so a right isometric view, or a left isometric view, just by clicking on these. So rather than using the flyover tool, I'll do that. The shortcut for top plan, which is easier to select a lot of things in because it goes into wireframe mode, is 0 on your number pad on your keyboard. But that isn't working properly on my moment, so I'm going to go to top plan. And what I need to do now is I need to make this window return. So if I zoom in, so that I can see this object, and zoom back out now, that's me selected this outline. And just so this makes a bit of sense to you, I'm going to jump down, I'm going to go into left isometric. Now, what I want to do is I want to make this return, but I want to make it go down the way. I want to move it away from this flat because this is 200mm. Oops, daisy. That. This is 200mm from the back of the flat here. That is 200mm. So at the moment, my object, my flat, the object is sitting there. So rather than it coming forward, which would only make by 200mm, which would only make it 175mm from this edge, because you're losing the 25mm here, because it's extruding through. I want to extrude back the way, and that's why I was saying you could either pull forward or pull backwards on the extrude, or extrude forwards, back, or up. Many different ways to say it. Hopefully one of those has made sense. Hopefully it hasn't confused you too much. So with that object still highlighted, still selected, again, if I go to modify, and if I go to, model, and I go to extrude here. Now it's remember the last thing that I put in, 25mm. What that would do is it would just hide it in this. Now if I were to type 200 here, I'm just going to show you, hit OK. You see that it's actually pulled through this object. You can see where it's clipping there, that horrible sort of like shading. That means that it's sitting and it's going through this. And that distance from the top of this flat to the edge is actually 175mm. So I've lost that 25mm and it's gone in the wrong direction. So what I want to do is be smart about this, and I want to tell it to go in the other direction. So if I go back to the object information palette here, it says extrusion and 200mm. If I highlight this and I type minus 200, enter, what it's done now is it's gone the other way. I can show you that if I jump into right, you can see that this is now down through the floor effectively. But that means that this matches this in a much nicer way. And that is us. Now, I'm going to jump to flyover. We now have our 3D flat that we can move around. They're not making everybody dizzy by doing that. Congratulations, you now have 3D object, a 3D piece of set. However, it is lying on the floor, and the odds are that in set design, probably not going to be on the floor unless something's gone horribly wrong. What we want to do is stand this up as though it would be with this bottom edge resting on the floor in a nice fashion, because otherwise this just doesn't really make much sense as an object. I mean, it might be on the floor, I guess, but it would be a bit weird. I select both these objects, so I can click and drag. There's nothing else around, or I can select once, hold down my Shift key, and select the other object. I'm left clicking on it, and I've got the two of these. Now, what I want to do is I want to rotate this object, this flat, both of these objects together on this edge here, in order to stand it up, just like you would do if it was in the workshop and you were just walking it up. So I'm going to go to the left view, and I can tell that this is the bottom edge because you can see where this curve here is. It actually has the sort of geometric lines there, so it's sort of marking out this curve there. So this is the edge that I want to flip this up on. And also tell this is the bottom edge because that is sitting at the sort of, these lines here designate where the 0 of the drawing is, just here. Now I want to effectively walk this up, rotate this up. Handily, there is a rotate tool. And the rotate tool looks very much this circle with the dot in the center. A little arrow for rotate. And if I click on this once, and just keep it in its default settings, I'm making sure that it's in standard mode, so it rotates the objects. The other mode duplicates it. So you would end up with one flat line down. You don't want that. Make sure that your mode is the right mode for you. Now you can see the tool is sitting in the drawing here, in the design layer, tractor. Now it has what we call a 2-click mode. So the first click designates its pivot point, so where it starts rotating from, and the objects will rotate in relation to that pivot point. So this here, if I click once there, which is the bottom edge on the floor, and the second one is the edge that will rotate. So I could click off this edge here, and I would have to try and line it up, line the base up, because this will be offset. This edge won't line up to that. What I tend to do is, if I know I want this edge flat on the floor, is I'll click once, and that will define pivot point and the edge that it pivots from. You can see now I've got that grey ghost. Show me where it'll end up. I'm just going to snap here, 90, and we have our object. Again, I'm going to press X, go back to my selection tool so that I don't accidentally rotate this object again in some weird fashion, because that would be very boring. I'll go to my flyover tool. And here we have our 3D object. Press X times. Deselect everything and go back. And there we are. The final thing we want to do now is, now that we have our completed object or objects, we want to put those into the right layer and the right class, because we've drawn this on our sketch layer or our drafting layer, or whatever sort of layer and class you're just sort of doodling it. And there's an easy way of doing that. When I click on an object, in its object info palette up here, it will show what class it is and what layer it is. Don't be confused by the toolbar up here. This just means what you're currently working in. With an object selected in the object info palette, this is where this is home is, effectively. This is where this object's home is. And it will do that for multiple objects. So if I click once on there, if I hold Shift on the flat, and then Shift and click onto this return, the arch return, I've got both my objects selected, and it's showing what class they're both in and what layer they're both in. Now, if these were on a different class, like two different classes from each other, this would be blank, and that would tell me that it wouldn't say sketch there, it would say nothing there, and that would tell me that these objects are on different layers or different classes if it show with multiple selected. Little tip there. What I want to do with the class here, little drop down in the object info palette, drop down the set, and if I click on arch flat now, boom, Extrude class. I'm going to hit yes. That just means that if there's any sub object, anything else attached to it, if it were a group, say, that it would just shift everything over rather than leaving certain bits in. So I will say yes to that. I'm going to do the same for my layer. So it's in Sketch. Click down in the Object Information palette next to Layer, and I'm going to choose Set. And that has disappeared off. It's deselected because my active is Sketch here, and I can't select this now because it's in a different design layer. And my layer option says Show and Snap Others. If I were to click down and say Show, Snap, Modify Others, even though I'm in Sketch layer here, I could select these objects. I don't want to do that. I want to only really work in my current design layer. If I go grey snap others, just to show you the difference between the modes, because I'm in the sketch design layer, this is now ghosted. So it looks like a little ghosty. A little ghost object just there. Which is why I stay in Show Snap Others. And then I'm just going to change to the set layer. Look in there. Now, if I select both those objects in the right class, and it's in the right layer. So that's what I want you to do next, is to put these in the right layer. And this is just a way of showing you how to sort of organize your drawings, organize your workflows. What you can do is you're not always going to remember, or you're not always going to instantly know how you want to organize your drawing, and maybe until you started really figuring out what you're going to draw, how you're going to draw it, you're going to want to doodle it first, and then as you go on, you go, hey, I'm going to create a set layer, I'm going to create this arch flat class. To put this arch flat in, I've created a truck now, I'm going to create a truck class. You're not going to maybe necessarily going to know what you're going to want to call things. So instantly having a sketch layer and a sketch class, you can just draw away and go, I think I'm going to make a new class or make a new layer to organize my drawing better, and here's how I'm going to do it. You can always do it like that. And then you can move them around. And just to show you the power of that, or the benefit even, is that this internal window cutout that we just kept, just in case it's going to be handy, is still visible in our drawing. When we've done sketching and wanting to start to present and move things around, in the visibility, so in the navigation, in both class and design layers, we have little visibility columns. The left column is visible, center column is invisible, and the last right column here is like ghost. So if I click in that center column in Sketch, see it disappears. Or if I click on ghost, you'll see it's transparent. So I can change the visibility of that, and I can automatically get rid of my sketch. And that's for any layers and also any objects as well. So now that we've done that, what we want to do is present our work with this third angle projection. Oops, is it? So we can show our object like this, and with an isometric as well. So we're going to create a sheet layer in Vectorworks that we'll then export out, that will show us some lovely views of this object.